Okay, so today's class on decimals, we are converting from decimals to fractions and then vice versa from fractions to decimals. So let's take a look at the first part, which is converting decimals to fractions. So when converting decimals to fractions, it's the very last number to the right of the decimal, which tells us what our denominator will be when we write the fraction. So the denominator can be a 10. If the decimal ends in the tenths position, it would be 100. If the decimal ends in the hundredths position, and so on. All right, it depends on the place value of the last number to the right of the decimal. So for example, if we have 0.36 and we need to convert it to a fraction. Okay, so our last number here is the 6, and that's in the hundredths position. Okay, the 3 is in the tenths position, the 6 is in the hundredths position. So all we do now is write 36 as our numerator, and our denominator is 100. All right, and next step would just be to reduce. So reduce if possible. So we can reduce by dividing top and bottom by the same number. So we can divide by 4. So we end up with 9 over 25. All right, so we can't reduce any further. So this is our answer. So therefore, we can say that 0.36 is equal to 9 over 25. They are equivalent. So here we have 4.537. We need to convert it to a fraction. So this 4 in the front here, that's a 4 as the whole number. So that just stays as a whole number. And then we have 537. And this last number here is in the thousandths position. Thousandths. So tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So therefore, it would be 537 over 1,000. All right, so check to see if we can do any reducing. We cannot do any reducing, so therefore we would leave our fraction as is. So just some more examples here. So we have 0.2, so that means the 2, that's in the tenths position, so we would write that as 2 over 10. And then you would reduce, divide top and bottom by 2, and that gives me 1 over 5. All right, next example, we have 0.76, so that would be 76 over 100. Check to see if you can reduce that. If you ever get stuck, they're both even numbers, so we can divide the top and bottom by 2. That gives me 38 over 50. And then I can keep reducing. They're even numbers again, so I can divide by 2 again. Divide by 2, divide by 2. Now I have 19 over 25, and now I can't reduce any further. So that would be my final answer for that one. 1 over 5 for 0.2. And lastly, 634 thousandths. So 634 over 1,000. And they are both even numbers, so you can reduce. So just start by dividing by 2. And we end up with 317 over 500. And now we can't reduce any further. So that would be our final answer for that one. All right, so the first example here, we have 2.8. So therefore, we know that 2 is a whole number, right? So it's just a 2 as a whole number. Then we have 8, and that's in the tenths position. So we put 8 over 10. All right, the only thing now left to do is reduce. So we just have to reduce the 8 over 10. The 2 stays as is. So I'll just do it down here. 8 and 10 are both divisible by 2. All right, so that gives me, 8 divided by 2 is 4, 10 divided by 2 is 5. So your answer is 2 4/5 for the first one. All right, always make sure to reduce. The next one is 0.44, and that 4 is in the hundredths position, so we'd have 44 over 100. All right, and then you can reduce by dividing the top and bottom by 4, and that gives me 11 over 25. All right, so again, I divided by 4, top and bottom, to reduce 11 over 25, and then we can't reduce any further. So those are the final answers there. So next we're looking at converting fractions to decimals. So here, a reminder that when you see a fraction, it is technically division. So what we're doing to convert a fraction into a decimal is we're going to divide the denominator, which is the bottom part of the fraction, into the numerator. If you see it as a mixed fraction, just convert it into an improper fraction and then you can divide. So for example, we have 3/8 and we need to convert that into a decimal. So 3/8, that means it's 3 is being divided by 8. So all we got to do now is divide. All right, so 8 can't go into 3, so we'll put a 0. And now we'll start adding zeros to the 3. So put a decimal here, we'll add our first 0, line up the decimal up top there as well. So now we're looking at 8, and how many times will it go into 30? So it'll go 8 times 3, which gives me 24. All right, and then we would subtract 30 minus 24, which is 6. All right, bring another 0 here, bring it down. That becomes 60. Now 8, how many times does it go into 60? It will go 7 times. Okay, so how many times does 8 go into 60? 7 times. So 8 times 7 is 56. Then we would subtract 60 minus 56 is 4. Bring another 0 there, bring it down. And finally, how many times does 8 go into 40? It's 5 times. All right, and we're left with 0. So therefore, the answer is 0.375. All right, so our next example, we have a mixed fraction. So the first thing we'll do is change it to an improper fraction. So 3 times 9 is 27, plus 4, which gives me 31 over 9. All right, so when we divide this, it's going to look like this. 31 is being divided by 9. All right, and now go ahead and start dividing. So firstly, how many times does 9 go into 31? 3 times. So that gives me 27. Subtract 31 minus 27, which is 4. And now we're going to start adding our decimal and the zeros. All right, so we'll bring down that. That becomes 40. How many times does 9 go into 40? 4 times. Okay, so 40 minus 36, that gives me 4 again. Bring a 0, bring it down, and we'll have to use 4 again. And now you can see that it's just going to keep repeating. 40 minus 36, that's 4 again. You can add another 0. It's just going to keep repeating. Like so. So this is where we would just stop. Our answer there would be 3.4. We put a little line on top of the 4 there to show that the 4 continues to repeat forever. From our previous part of the lesson, if it's 4 over 10, we know that the 4 is in the 10th position. So because the denominator is 10, this one we can easily do and just put it as 0.4. All right, but if you did do the division method, that's fine as well. It would be 4 divided by 10. Can't go into 4. Add the 0 there. Then 10 times 4 goes to 40. Okay, so our answer is still 0.4. All right, here we have 23 over 5. So 23 is being divided by 5. So how many times can 5 go into 23? 4 times. Then we would subtract here. We would get 3, add a decimal and a 0, line up the decimal, bring that 0 down, and now 5 can go into 36 times. And then we're finished. So here our answer is 4.6. And here the answer was 0.4. Now another trick you can use is equivalent fractions. So I'll show you here that 14 over 25, you can make it an equivalent fraction to 100. And then you can see here that we multiplied by 4. And then multiply by 4 here. 14 times 4 is 56. Now we have 56 over 100, therefore the fraction would be 0.56. All right, but again, you can do the division for this question as well. 14 divided by 25, you'll still end up with 0.56. All right, so 4 over 5. So there's a couple ways that we can do this one. Is firstly, you can change it to an equivalent fraction. We can put it over 10. So 5 times 2 gives me 10, and then 4 times 2 gives me 8. So we have 8 over 10, which is 0.8. All right, so that's one method you could do that. You could have also done division, where you 4 and divide by 5. Okay, so you can do this as well. All right, 0, and then 5 times 8 gives the 40. So either way, your answer is 0.8. All right, 5 over 6. So if we're dividing 5, divided by 6 like this, and 6 can't go into 5, so we put our decimal, start adding zeros. How many times can it go into 50? 6 times 8 is 48, and then we start subtracting. This gives me 2, bring down that 0, and we get 3 here, 6 times 3, which gives me 18, and that continues. Subtract, have a 0, bring it down, and it's just going to keep going. All right, so the answer here would be 0.83. You can leave it as 0.83, showing that you've rounded it, or you could put that line on top of the 3, showing that the 3 will continue to repeat.